Hello, I am Dennis Dostert, your host for Understanding Town Government. Today we will look at the role of the Inland Wetlands Commission. The Inland Wetlands Commission was created by state law and the Board of Selectmen in 1973. Its purpose is to regulate development and any other activities which might alter the nature of designated wetlands that are not coastal wetlands, such as marshes and streams. The group of 7 citizen volunteers walk properties and study maps and regulations for applicants wishing to pursue activities which might affect these wetlands. If you wish to do anything which might impact one of these wetlands, you must first obtain an application at Town Hall South on Boston Street. It is likely that one of the first people you will meet will be Regina Reed, our Inland Wetlands Officer. She is our guest today. Established where these inland wetlands exist, and who makes these maps?
That's a good question, Dennis. And let me start by saying wetlands in the state of Connecticut is classified by soil types. Not where you see the water, not where you see the bogs, but the soils. And the person that is the one that figures out whether they're wetland soils or not is a soil scientist. And that person goes to school to learn to become a soil scientist. And then they go out in the field with an auger, which is a metal pole with some sort of a handle on the top and sort of a corkscrew kind of thing on the bottom. And they take that auger and they plunge it into the soil and they twist it and twist it and twist it and twist it until they get it down a certain number of inches, maybe 12 to 14 inches. And then they pull it up and they look at the soil that's attached to the corkscrew portion of the auger, the bottom of the auger. And they have a book. And the book has all different colors of soil types. And they look at the soil that they pulled up and look in the book to see where this soil that they've pulled up most closely matches. And that tells them whether or not the soil is a wetland soil. They have different characteristics and different colors than regular soils that are not wetland soils. Once that gets done, if it's for what we call a boundary clarification, where somebody is planning to do something, usually it's a larger commercial project, but it can be a homeowner, and they have to determine exactly where the edge of the wetland is so that they know whether or not they're going to be doing something within the wetland or outside of it. Once they determine where the soil types are, they put little tags in the trees or the bushes, or sometimes just on stakes, and a land surveyor goes out and she or he surveys these stakes, takes all that information, goes back to their office and puts it on a map. And then you get a map that shows the property and where the edge of a wetland is.
And so how does the process of doing this get started? I mean, it was what the state legislature said that we needed to do this, and so we hired a soil scientist and some other people to go around making maps. Is that how it happened?
Well, on or about 1974, the state decided that they would regulate wetlands because they decided that they were valuable and should be protected. And if you look at the state statutes, wetlands and watercourses is chapter 440. And in there, it states exactly what the state is trying to protect and how the process goes about in terms of enforcement, applications, approvals. And what the state did was they handed the authority down to the different towns and cities for the towns to create a wetland commission. And that commission is a body much like the Planning and Zoning Commission in that they create their own regulations. However, they have to model very closely the state's modeled regulations. And they're responsible for regulating the wetlands in the town to make sure, number one, that they don't all disappear and get filled and become subdivisions or shopping plazas. And number two, to protect the wildlife and the creatures that live in the wetlands. I mean, it's not just frogs and salamanders, but there are certain birds, there's certain vegetation types, there's certain riparian buffers that should be kept between the edge of a wetland and development, depending on what type of development is being proposed. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you have. Yeah. Okay, well, that answers the question about how this all comes about. And what do you do as the Inland Wetlands Officer?
Well, I review every single building permit that comes into the building department. I look at it for zoning compliance and inland wetland compliance. If I see that something is proposed to be built, whether it's a shed, a swimming pool, a barn, a garage, an addition to the house, whatever it is, and that particular proposition, that particular addition, whatever it is going to be within the Town of Guilford's Wetlands Commission 100-foot upland jurisdictional review area, which means in Guilford, anything you do from the edge of the wetlands 100 feet out into what I'll call dry land, which is not a wetland, is subject to review by the Guilford Inland Wetland Commission. So I look at these building permits to see if the proposals are within 100 feet. If they are, my duty is to inform the applicant that they have to make an application to the Inland Wetland Commission. And in doing so, many times we could tell where the edge of the wetland is by looking at the subdivision maps. Once in a while, it's for property that was subdivided before we had wetland regulations, and in that case, the applicant is advised to hire a soil scientist. There's not a lot of money to hire soil scientists, and go out and figure out where the edge of the wetland is and put flags in the ground. Sometimes that's all the commission needs to approve an application. Occasionally, they're going to ask for this to be put on a map, and they're going to ask for more information about the project, such as if they're building a freestanding garage or a studio or a swimming pool, and it's sort of on the side of the hill. They're going to want to know how the grading is going to be around this structure. They're going to want to see silt fence put on the map, so that we know that when it rains and the ground is all bare and all the vegetation's been taken off it, that dirty, silty water is not going to go into the wetlands.
And so the applicant for is it sort of a variance from the rules that an applicant comes in looking for?
No. And many people are confused about that.
Really?
When you get a permit from the Wetland Commission, you're not getting a variance for anything. There's no such thing. What you're doing is you are showing the Wetland Commission that your project, whatever it is that you want to construct, and sometimes they don't want to construct anything. Sometimes they just want to clear some land and add some fill, and it's not going to go in the wetland, but it's going to be within that 100-foot jurisdictional review area, so the commission's got to look at it. They have to show that, number one, during construction, whatever it's going to be, that there'll be no impact to the wetlands. And number two, after the project is done, there'll be no long-term or permanent impacts to the wetlands. That's what the Wetland Commission is looking at. Their view is very narrow. They can only look at impacts to the wetlands, nothing else.
But they can make exceptions. I know years ago we wanted to put a beach on the property that the neighborhood owns. and we got a permit to do that, which would meant filling in some of the wetland that was there because it was along the shore, and if you couldn't do that, the piece of property would not be useful. So what happened there? What's that?
Well, the Wetland Commission actually gave your association permission, approval to do some filling. And that is one of the activities that they regulate.
Yeah. So it is kind of a variance in that regard.
No, it's not a variance. No, it is not a variance. It's approval to place fill either within a review area or within the wetland.
Okay.
And creating a beach and putting sand on it, in essence, is filling.
Yeah.
Either at the edge of or within a wetland.
So it isn't at all like having to show a hardship or anything.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a hardship thing. It's just a case of if something is going to be proposed within their 100-foot upland jurisdictional review area, or in your case, within a wetland, maybe somebody has to, they want to fill a wetland because they have a piece of property that's bisected by a wetland, and they want to be able to build a bridge or some sort of a driveway to get from one side of their property to the other to maintain it. That is a regulated activity. Virtually anything that you're going to do within a wetland would be considered a regulated activity. Some of the things that people cannot do without a permit, which they're often not aware of, you can't clear cut within 100 feet of a wetland or into a wetland.
What do you mean clear cut?
Clear cut means they have a wooded area, and for whatever reason, they decide, oh, we don't like those woods because we can't see a view of something, whether it's a wetland, a pond, maybe a lake, a brook, a river, whatever it is. So they decide they want to cut the trees down. They can't do that without first going to the Wetland Commission.
They can't cut down all of them, or they can't even cut down one?
They can't cut down any trees.
Okay.
They have
Without
to go to the
Wetlands
Wetland
Commission. Okay.
Right.
I mean, so you can't go down there and knock down a tree for firewood, for example, without...
Nope.
Yeah.
No, you can't. You're going to want to get a tree for firewood, make sure it's not within the review area. Otherwise, you've got to make an application to the commission.
And are most of these applications able to be handled by the property owner?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, 90% of the applications we receive are applications from a homeowner. Usually it's a swimming pool or a shed. I've seen so many shed applications and swimming pool applications. As a matter of fact, some of these applications are staff approvals. For instance, swimming pools, above ground swimming pools on a grade of less than 10% or less can be approved by staff. It doesn't have to go to the full commission. A structure, 350 square feet or less, can be approved by staff. Additions on sonotubes, in other words, an addition without a foundation, a dug foundation where they put up the cement walls and then build upon the cement walls, is approved by staff. Things of that nature.
And so with your help,
Yeah.
they go and make the application.
Oh,
and-
sure.
and
We
you
help.
look at it.
We help many times. We tell them, we look at what they want to do. We help them fill out the application form, especially if they've never looked at one before. I mean, we do it every day, so we're happy to help you with it. Advise people how to make a map if it's a homeowner and it's a simple thing. You just draw on the subdivision map your house and where you want to put your shed or your swimming pool, and show that you're going to put up silt fence, because that's going to retain erosion and stop mud and dirt from getting into the wetland.
And are there any circumstances in which an applicant might need professional help other than a soil scientist or?
Oh, sure. For a subdivision, you're going to need not for a single cut. You can have a single cut subdivision as of right, But for a 2-lot subdivision after the first cut,
Okay, clarify that. What is meant by a single cut subdivision?
well, if you have a piece of property that's never been subdivided, the state statutes allow you to cut off 1 lot. So you can take that parcel and break it in 2. And you can do that what we call as of right. You don't have to make an application to the Planning and Zoning Commission. You can just do it. But for a subdivision of the remaining lot, in other words, you cut off 1 lot, you sell it, give it away, whatever you do to it, give it to the land trust, and then you have the remaining land. That land, when you go to subdivide it, you have to hire a land surveyor. If it's has wetlands on it, you have to engage the services of a soil scientist to figure out where the edge of the wetlands is. And then that becomes an application to the Inland Wetland Commission. It becomes a boundary clarification and a subdivision referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what happens when we get an application that's submitted to us? Aside from paying the fee, it gets put on an agenda. And the Inland Wetland Commission in Guilford walks all their applications so that they can look at the land, look at the terrain, look at where the wetlands are. The surveyor will have staked out on the property whatever it is, whether it's a piece of property with nothing and they're going to put a house, or whether it's an accessory structure or a swimming pool, whatever it is, it's staked out on the property. And the commission goes out and they look at the wetlands and they look at what's being proposed. And it's sort of they get a mental snapshot of the configuration of the wetlands and the property, and nothing else. And then they go back, and at the meeting, they render a decision. Now, occasionally, what's being proposed is not complicated, in which case they will render a decision right out in the field. Mm-hmm. They will either approve it or tell the applicant they need more information, bring it to the meeting on Wednesday. But
so they don't need a public hearing on everything?
No, they do not.
Unlike, for example, the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, no, they don't. It's usually just a regular meeting agenda item. Occasionally, if the commission looks at it, actually if it's town staff looks at the application and it looks like it's going to be quite involved. I mean, very involved. Take, for instance, development on the rock pile. Mm-hmm. The commission, staff recommended to the commission, and after the commission looked at the maps, they agreed that it was what we call a significant activity. There's a lot going on, very technical. And so that becomes a public hearing. And the commission is the one that decides. They have to vote whether or not to make it a public hearing. And in that case, then it gets advertised twice in the paper before we have the meeting. The applicant is obligated to provide their experts, and they're also obligated to pay for experts that the town hires to look at the application. Again, this is for a very complicated thing.
Or something has a significant impact.
Yeah, yes. Significant. Maybe a bridge over the West River might be a real significant impact. But for the ordinary application, unless we get a petition signed by 25 people who live in the town of Guilford, who are over the age of 18, which would make the commission have a public hearing according to the state statutes. Unless we get something like that, the majority of the applications we process are just regular agenda items, no public hearings. And the other thing that can happen is if the commission thinks that there are a significant number of people who are interested in an application, they can themselves decide to hold a public hearing. But again, public hearings are really triggered by how complicated the application is, whether it's a significant activity or not. And the other thing is a petition being submitted to the commission. Oh, and it has to be submitted within 14 days of the date that the commission formally receives the application at their meeting. If a petition is submitted within the 14 days, then the commission has to hold the public hearing, whether they want to or not.
Now, these decisions are made by a simple majority of the
Yes.
committee?
Yes,
Okay.
we have 7 members, 7 regular members on the Wetland Commission and 3 alternates. And at a meeting, all the commissioners that are seated, there are always 7 of them seated at any particular time, all those commissioners can vote, but we only need 4 to pass an application.
Okay. And once it's approved, what do you do then? How long?
A letter goes out to the applicant, an approval letter. If it involved a map made by a land surveyor, let's say a subdivision or sometimes a planned residential development, then they have to print that approval letter with the conditions of approval on the map. It goes out to the applicant, they get the letter, and they're good to go. They can pull their building permit, they can do the work that they got approved for, they can do whatever it is that they asked for.
Now, here's something. Now, what if it's denied? It seemed to me it'd be very hard to appeal this to a court, because...
Yeah, well, it has been done. If it's denied, the applicant can appeal their decision to the Supreme Court, or Superior Court rather, in which case then we all go to court and a judge makes a decision.
All this technical information, it must be a challenging situation
it
for a
is.
judge.
The other thing is, here's an interesting thing. It doesn't happen with planning and zoning. If an applicant is not getting a response from the Wetland Commission, which has never happened in the town of Guilford, but the state statutes say if the town or the city is ignoring them, is not looking at their application or whatever it is, they can take that application to the director of inland wetlands, the state director of inland wetlands, and get it approved there. I've never seen that happen in Guilford.
But it is possible.
It is possible. It won't happen in our town, I could tell you that, but there are a few towns, I guess, in the state that it may be difficult to get things
No, does the commission have any other responsibilities other than what we've discussed so far?
No, their only objective is protection of the wetlands, to make sure if there's some kind of development being proposed that there's no harm to the wetlands, there's no impact to the wetlands, while the building or whatever it is being done, and then afterwards, long-term, there'll be no harm to the wetlands. Long-term effect.
Now, are there any recent issues or anything else that you might like to discuss?
With wetlands? No, I mean, wetlands is kind of a technical thing. As I said to you, they're determined by soil types. A soil scientist is a person who goes out and actually, with their auger, determines where the edge of the wetland soils ends, and that gets put on a map, usually gets put on a map, and is presented as an application to the Wetland Commission with whatever proposal the applicant wants to do. And these are not what we call exceptions to the rules, because the rules allow activity within the wetlands. They even allow filling within the wetlands, but the commission, in making that sort of a determination, has to determine that there'll be no long-term impacts to the wetlands. Occasionally, a wetland is proposed to be filled and an applicant proposes mitigation, either creating a wetland adjacent to where the area is going to be filled or within the vicinity, or creating some kind of a conservation easement or something that recreating what the wetland looked like before anything was done to it adjacent, so that the wildlife and the creatures of the wetland can still produce and thrive and live within that area. It's all about the wetlands, which are really, really important, because without them, without those swamps that we have and everything else, when it really rains, they are like a big sponge. They just soak up all the water, and they actually prevent flooding. I mean, you only have to look at what happened in New Orleans to understand what happens if you fill too many wetlands. And that's the role of the Inland Wetland Commission. It's a balance, allowing development, but making sure that there are no impacts to the wetlands, permanent impacts to the wetlands.
Well, thank you very much.
It's a part science, and it's part, just being able to make a determination on what the right thing is.
Anything else?
That's it. That's it. Come and see us at the town hall. We will help you. Don't be afraid of us. Don't be afraid of the Wetland Commission.
That's good advice, and I hope you found today's show helpful. Please tune in for another show in the series. These shows are designed to help citizens understand how to work with our town government in improving their property and style of living in a way that benefits others and our natural environment. You can review these shows on the GCT website if you are considering making an application. Have a good day.